right, let's talk about game a little bit. We're going to break down some game stuff. We're going to talk about something that I've created, or a model of seduction called the seduction quadrant. It's just a model that'll give you a better understanding of how to approach women in different circumstances. So there's an interesting show done and discussion on the Rule Zero episode on Saturday, where they were talking about the difference between what's called direct game or indirect game. It's a good episode. I'll link it in the description. A lot of different opinions on that and which way to go. And if you're not familiar with either of these things, direct game is like straightforward. I mean, most basic definition. Direct game is straightforward, basically like, hey, let's bang, okay? The most direct, thing that you could. So allowing your sexual interest to be known right away, and you in or you're out, okay? That's the most direct of direct game, okay, that we could muster up, okay? Kind of like, are you in or are you out? And then there's indirect game, which, assumes that you're not just going directly sexual, but you're basically indirectly approaching and kind of feeling the person out, or vetting the person out, or whatever, to try to build sexual interest. You know what I mean? And so here's the thing about game in general. It all works and it all doesn't work at the same time. All right. So even guys who are really bad with picking up women in game, and they're bad with seduction, still get results. They just don't get good results. But there are guys that get women and get laid all the time who are terrible, at what they're doing. Well, for example, friend zone, friendship game can work. There are guys that will befriend a girl and do the beta male, I'm your friend and I'm your emotional support and all this stuff. And when she's just vulnerable or not, or drunk enough, or not, in the right whatever state, sometimes those guys get girls to sleep with them by friend zoning their way into their vaginas. Okay, now I don't recommend that though as a way to approach women, or a way of handling women, for a number of different reasons. But that's an example of something that's really inferior, okay, but does in fact work. Direct or indirect, I don't get in that debate, because it depends on the situation. And I'm going to get into why that is. It's the same reason why, if you remember previous videos I had done that discussed, it wasn't just about desire, but it was about her sexual decision making also. You know what I mean? And so it was about her barriers too. And I'll link that video. You know what I mean? So somebody could have high desire for somebody, but for example, if she doesn't sleep with people on the first date, or whatever, that's her rule, then her I forgot the name that I even gave it, but her decision point, sexual decision point, is going to require a much higher desire that level than if she, let's say, had known a guy for 5 dates and hadn't slept with him yet, and I don't know, whatever, and she was horny and she wanted to do it and all this stuff. Her desire could be less, meaning he's done less to try to seduce her, but her sexual decision point was less too, so she ends up sleeping with him. Anyway, I did a whole video on that. I don't want to revisit that, but it's important to understand, because when women make sexual decisions, whether it's sleeping with a guy or being with a guy long term or whatever, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not this black and white, alpha, beta, that's the only thing you look at. There's a lot of other things that go into the decision making, right? So you have to understand all of it. You have to be sort of dynamic and in your understanding, not just have a basic rudimentary understanding from a book or two you've read, you're going to miss like a whole lot of things. And this understanding happens, by the way, when you interact with women. The more you interact with women on all levels, okay, this is why I say date women, okay, spin plates, date women before you settle in, is because that's the better you're going to have that understanding. It's not just going to come from academic research or books. It's going to come from actually being out there and dealing with women, okay? So that's how you'll get to know it, but whatever. So the more you get to, you'll realize things like hypergamy, things like, them wanting the best genetic option, which is usually that alpha male archetype. These things are all true things, but their decisions to actually go with that guy versus another guy or whatever, there's a lot more that plays into those sexual decisions, okay? And so based on that, when I'm gaming somebody, I'm not going to just, you could take a sledgehammer and just hit everything with it, and then eventually you'll get results. And that's what direct mode 1 high volume game basically is. You got 20 different prospects of women a day through social media, online, dating sites, and in person, and you're just hitting them with the sledgehammer of, do you want to bang, do you want to bang, do you want to bang? And then eventually, through sheer numbers, people will say yes. That's certainly one way to go about it, but I don't spend time or waste time, honestly, screwing around with sourcing women like that. I'm not saying don't do it, okay? There's guys that do it. There's guys that teach how to do it. I can teach you how to do it. If you have scarcity with women, it's a good thing to learn to get more options in your life. But I mean, when I'm a single guy, I'm busy chasing my purpose, chasing excellence, not chasing women. And so women just sort of come in and out of my life when I'm a single guy. You know what I mean? Even when I'm not a single guy. Women just come in and out of my life, okay? And I allow that to happen, and I know how to game and seduce them appropriately. And so as they come in and out of my life, I'm not just sitting here, sourcing 20, 30 women a day, basically hitting them with a sledgehammer of, do you want to bang, do you want to bang? What I'm doing is I'm doing what's called, it's an NLP technique more or less, but it's the basics of it is this, but we're going to get further in depth. What I'm doing is more or less mirroring and then leading. Okay, so if a woman is at a sexual decision point and she's open for sexual advances and she's attracted to me, then going that mode 1 or direct approach of, do you want to bang, or going overtly sexual, essentially. I might not just be like, do you want to bang, right? But being overtly sexual right away would be the appropriate answer, because that's what she's open for, that's what she wants, right? But there's plenty of time, especially when you're dealing with social circle game, meaning people that are in your social circle, okay? Where you don't just do that, right? You don't just go direct like that. Or you're at the gym, or you're at day game, where you're at places where women are not looking to be approached. If you just go, sledgehammer direct mode 1, you might get the police called on you. You know what I mean? Who knows, right? I mean, depending on how aggressive you are. And so you have to have, social skills to be able to recognize where a woman is and not approach a woman in a way that's going to feel like she's being accosted or turn her off or whatever. That's going to have the opposite results of what you want, right? And it's one thing if you're on dating sites, going direct very quickly makes a lot of sense because they're on dating sites for a reason, and so are you, right? Like at the club or at some environment where women are there to get picked up on, it might make sense to go direct right away. But of course, again, mirroring and then leading is a technique, and it's where you use your social skills to recognize where a woman's at, and you kind of match where she's at, and then you use a set of skills to move her along into having attraction and arousal for you. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. So there's a whole quadrant, what I call it, you can call it a sexual arousal or sexual attraction quadrant I'm going to share with you to get us into it. But first we need to start with this principle, which is I want you to understand objective versus subjective, okay? And what you're looking for is a subjective buy-in, I call it. All right, so objective versus subjective, and you're looking for subjective buy-in. So a subjective buy-in is, all right, so there's objective reality, right? So there is your sexual market value based on, your looks, your physical health, physical appearance, right? How you talk, act, interact, your communication skills, that's your game skills, your success, your social status, your money. These are all things that play into an image, okay? So she asked, but she doesn't, she's not able to really understand or look at your objective. If there was a way of having objective sexual market value, or the objective reality of who you are, that's not what's actually that important. And that's not even really what she is going to see. What she's going to see is her subjective view of your sexual market value. And so you got to understand that there's a difference between the two things before we even get started, okay? Because there's objectively who you are. You could be this awesome dude. But if she is in a frame of mind or just a frame of reference where she's not going to see it, then none of that stuff is going to matter. You know what I mean? And so there has to be, I'm not saying you don't have to have, like, for example, good looks, right? But, so here's an even better example. So let's say like money and status. Well, when you first meet a girl, let's say you meet her at a club or bar or tavern. You dress nice, you have a decent looking watch on, you have some accessories and you look put together, You walk in and you're a put together guy, all right? That illustrates status and maybe even, and you have nice shoes on too. You're wearing shoes that she notices that are pretty, like, not cheap shoes. You get what I'm saying? They're nice shoes. Now you should just be having these things and wearing these things because that's who you are as a man anyway, and that's what high value men do, okay? We make sure we look good, presentable when we do things, right? But when she sees that stuff, it's just, all it is enough for her subjectively to believe that your status and money situation is good, right? Good enough for her to select you. Does that make a sense? She doesn't need to see what your bank account is. You know what I mean? She's not objectively knowing any of this stuff. It's just all she needs is enough information to have a subjective buy-in. Okay, this guy's high value based on how he appears. You know what I mean? In terms of checking the block of status and money, right? For example, you know a few people in a particular establishment, for example, that brings your social proof up. That's, cool, social status block checked. Or she checks your Instagram or Facebook, you have your pictures are selected where you look pretty decent. It seems like you're successful, based on what you present. All right, this is a higher status male. Block checked. Are you actually a higher status male? I don't know, right? That's not actually that important though. What's important is her subjective buy-in. All right, so we have to cover that right off the bat because this is dealing with how she perceives you and how she perceives the situation, not what's objectively true. So a guy walks into a place, for example, or meets a girl who's high SMV, and she doesn't immediately jump on his D, right? There's a lot of guys who think, well, then the burning desire just isn't there, and you need to focus on somebody else because this girl didn't just jump on your D all of a sudden. Look, high SMV women are inundated with attention all the time, so that might not be the response. Or if she's in a state of mind where she's not open, I'm about to talk about open and closed here in a minute, she's not open to a sexual advance, right? And she's not even open, like she's not even her frame of mind or frame of reference in that moment. Her subjective, thought or idea about you isn't going to be seeing you as a sexual object. It's not going to see you as an alpha male that she would be attracted to if she's not in the right moment or in the right frame. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that objectively mean you're not attractive or you're not that right person? No, of course not. But it's her subjective feelings on it. I'll do a separate video on this, but one of the girls I was seeing a while back was approached and courted by a professional football player. All right, so dude was a big, jacked dude with, plenty of opportunity and lots of money. And he was throwing her attention and offers. So he had highest status of anybody in town that day. You know what I mean? He was he's actually a very well-known player at the time and had plenty of money, plenty of status. This chick was with me and shot him down like 100%. Why did she shoot him down? This guy is actually objectively higher status, higher, objectively, has more going, at least in those areas, than I do. But the reason she did was because, she was direct approached with this guy. It was like, oh, come over, let's party, and stuff's gonna happen. And it was her and her friend, and she shot him down again. So she shot him down because her subjective mind saw me as more alpha and better. Was it true? Well, I'll tell you right now, in a number of ways, it's not true. Maybe in terms of my behavior and my game, sure. But if we're just looking at social status and finances, no, this guy had way more social status and finances than me, but she still shut him down anyway. So again, it's not, and you see this all the time. How many times do women pick, like, I'm not saying I was the loser in that scenario at all, okay? But how many times do they pick the loser or the asshole or the guy that's lower sexual market value, and that's who they end up sleeping with? Happens all the time, right? It's because there's a subjective nature of how they perceive their SMV, all right? And so we have to just understand that going into it. So when you're gaming a woman, what you're doing is you're playing with her subjective view over what's objectively true, to get that subjective buy-in, okay? So she needs to basically buy into seeing you as a mateable, high-value man that she wants to mate with, okay? She has to have that buy-in, and that buy-in is subjective, all right? So you're gonna use, obviously, objective reality and skills to get there, but it's her perception that we're worried about. Okay, so we understand that there is a subjective nature to her perceptions of your SMV, okay? So her arousal and attraction to you, there's an objective nature to it, all right? The objective nature obviously formulates the reality that she sees, but it is how she sees it, which is subjective. Now, a lot of what plays into that subjective nature isn't just the objective reality of who you are, it's also her mood and how she's feeling. Her mood and her emotions or feelings, and really that's driven by primal drives, okay? Sexual decision making is driven by her hindbrain or primal drives, which create emotions or feelings, which then create behaviors, which then cause actions, behaviors, actions, right? And then that causes her to rationalize or use logic later to explain it all. That's how sexual decision-making works for a woman, all right? And so for her mood, if she's in a bad mood, how sexually open do you think she's gonna be, right? Or how do you think that's gonna maybe cloud the way she might perceive you? Or if she had a bad experience, let's say me, I'm more of a muscular guy. Let's say she had bad experiences with muscular guys, or she's used to muscular guys being jerks or assholes. How is that going to cloud her subjective emotions towards how she sees me in my sexual market value? How is that going to cloud or frame how she feels about my approach, right? And so what this leads into is really social calibration. Social calibration or social awareness is really important when it comes to game. So my version of game and how I teach it, because remember, anything can work, right? You can just hit things with a sledgehammer, eventually going to get results, all right? I can just keep going up to girls and saying, hey, want some fuck? Want some fuck? Okay, whatever. And then they're eventually someone's gonna be like, sure, whatever. But that's not always the best way. That's not always the most efficient or effective way. That's not always gonna get me the best results with the least amount of time investment. You know what I mean? And so social calibration is kind of where I begin when I teach people game. And that's going to get us into this attraction or arousal quadrant. All right, so it's a quadrant of how to see that. And so what we're looking at is, when I say attraction or arousal quadrant, we're looking at the mood that she needs to be in order to make a sexual decision in your favor, which, let's boil it down to brass tacks, it's making a decision to bang you, okay? Now, I'm not saying that every time you approach a woman, like I get tradcons and Christians get really mad at me because it's all about you're just trying to bang women. Well, no, okay, if you want to pursue something more than that, that's wonderful. But she's not, aroused by you and making a decision to want to be with you from an arousal perspective because you're a good provider. All right, that's not what you're looking for. You want her to be desiring you, okay, on a primal level. And so that means bang, all right? So she wants to bang you. That's where we need to go with this. Whether you make the decision to do that or not, whatever your, your ideas are, is it all about just, it's not all about just getting girls to bang you, but when you approach somebody, she has to at least want to bang you, right? Or you're not going to get anywhere else, all right? And so not where you want to, anyway. And so anyway, that's what we're talking about, her frame of mind and her emotional frame, her subjective frame, so she makes the decision to make a sexual decision in your favor. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. And that leads us to this quadrant here. Okay, so here's this quadrant. Now, you'll notice on one end here, I got tension, okay? And on the other end of the quadrant, we got comfort. So back in the old game days, all right, back in the old, like, pickup, artist stuff, I think it was Mystery Method, if you look at his book, had figured out that there's a sort of that you had to have tension in order for sexual arousal or attraction to exist. But too much tension, and then she wouldn't be interested, she would be too much anxiety, and she would get uncomfortable and not want to make a sexual decision in your favor. So you had to have enough comfort, and too much comfort, then she would like you, but it'd be more like a friend. You know what I mean? So in the old pickup days, they were always they looked at a line and a difference between tension and comfort, and they were always trying to balance that tension and comfort to where she would be sexually aroused and attracted. So that was a good model. I thought that was good. But I thought it was incomplete, though, because she could have all the tension in the world and not be sexually open to you at all, okay? Or she could so that's not, it's not because she has too much anxiety necessarily either. So there seemed to be something missing. And what seemed to be missing from that was just whether or not, it wasn't just tension or comfort, but whether or not she would be open sexually or closed sexually, okay? So those are two other points that this would make it a quadrant now and not just a straight line. So we're looking at whether or not how open she is sexually versus how closed she is sexually. And I'm going to use examples to explain that so that makes more sense to you. But that's the basis of her sexual decision-making is going to be based on having enough tension and enough comfort balanced between the two that's going to cause her to be open sexually, all right, versus closed. So I'll give you examples of what I mean. So alpha sex, all right? So alpha sex is that high desire, right, where she's massively desiring this person. This is where all the orgasms happen. This is where she's just incredibly, desired by a high genetic option. Well, where's alpha on this quadrant? Alpha sex is high amounts of tension, just enough comfort, okay, so she doesn't get scared off and close, but high amount of tension, and then she's completely sexually open. So when a woman is completely sexually open, let's say 10 out of 10 open, and very, very tense, she's going to have a very intense sexual experience with that guy. This is the person where she cannot wait. Like, she can't wait to get home. She's having sex with him in the car. She's in the alley with him. You know what I mean? Like, she's starting that process early. She goes literally feral for this guy because her tension, her level of tension is so high and her sexual openness is so high because of a number of reasons now, subjective reasons. So some of it's going to be his SMV and how he shows up, but some of it's just going to be her mood. If she's in a certain part of her cycle, for example, where she's hornier, then let's say if she's on her period, for example, and she's not wanting to be with a new guy, that's going to make her more open, you know? If she's maybe had a couple of drinks, but she's not drunk or anything, but just she's loosened up, that can make her more open. Like if she's like, there's a number of factors, right, that will play in, but basically maybe she hasn't been with somebody in a while, or she went through a bad breakup and she's trying to, you know what I mean? She's ready to get herself out there again. She's on a girls' night out or whatever, and she's looking to meet that dude, that alpha bangs dude, right? This is where she opens up. And so and then she meets that guy. He creates a lot of tension for her because he's socially calibrated, and he knows how to create that tension, balancing only enough comfort really to not scare her off, and then boom, she has a wild, crazy sexual experience. So that's where that exists on the scale. But let's look at some other things here. Okay, if the guy on the other side of the scale, if she has a ton of comfort with that guy and she's sexually closed, that is friend zone territory. Okay, so as she gets on the comfort side, her level of sexual openness will generally go down. All right, and so so she meets this new person, and he gives a lot of comfort, a lot of friend zone vibes, a lot of beta vibes, a lot of beta tells, demonstrates he's not this alpha dude, right? Can't create tension. She thinks he's cool, really nice guy. I'm so comfortable. He's just like a brother to me. He's just like my best friend. All right, that's where she sees this guy. This is where she's at. She has total comfort around this guy. She'd probably change in front of him because she doesn't see him as a sexual option. She's just completely sexually closed with this guy. And that's where she's at with that guy, to give you an example. Now let's look at other parts of the quadrant. So let's say she's married to the guy, and so she's sexually available enough to be a good wife, but she's not sexually excited about him. So she's open sexually because she married the guy, right? So she'll have sex with him, whatever, and she'll have sex with him to, maybe this is where the transactional sex happens or exists, all right? It's not a super exciting experience because there's not enough tension there. She may feel like she loves the guy, okay? She might feel like she's in love with him because there's a lot of comfort, okay, for being with that guy, but there's not enough tension to develop that arousal. So when she decides to make the sexual decision to be with him, it's because they're together, you know what I mean, and whatever. This is where that transactional sex exists. She does it out of obligation, out of duty. She has, it's not like it's a terrible thing or whatever. She might orgasm, might not, but she's just not that excited about it, right? So that's where transactional sex is. It's way on the comfort side, and then she is sexually open for that person in those moments. So she's making the sexual decision to be with him, but not very exciting for her, right? Now let's look at over here where she's sexually closed and a lot of tension. All right, so sexual closed, not a lot of tension. That's the creepy guy. That's the rapey vibe guy. Okay, so if she's closed off sexually and this dude is, creeping her out with trying to build tension, he comes across, because he's not socially calibrated, he comes across as the rapey, creepy dude. You see what I mean? So when she has that really bad feeling about somebody, she's got a lot of tension and anxiety, but she's not sexually open to him. She's closed. So the guy she thinks is the creepy, rapey dude that she doesn't trust, she's not comfortable with him. You see why just the two lines now don't really fit? You have to have this open and closed line as well, because it's not comfort that ruins the attraction for the guy who is creepy. It's that there's tension and no sexual openness, right? So that's where that lies there. So whenever you approach somebody, they're going to be in a particular mood. And so their mood, you're going to want to start there. If you start in the wrong place, you're going to just turn them off. Now, we're trying to get you increase your rate of success, right? And so you're not having to go through hundreds of people just to get a few people to say yes to you. And a lot of times, those people that are going to say yes to you aren't even a challenge to your SMV, right? Because if it's simply numbers game, then they're looking at, it's either right place, right time, you might get lucky, or they're simply looking at, rudimentary aspects of SMV. And so if you're only like if you're a dude who's like a 7, okay, you're only gonna pull 6s, right? You're only gonna pull 5s. That's the hottest girl you're gonna get. If you're a dude who's like a 7 who has game though, your perceived SMV, her perception of your SMV could go up to an 8 or a 9. And then you could bag 7 or 8s. You know what I mean? Generally as a man, you're only gonna pull women that are excited to be with you, that are lower SMV than you. Not lower objectively though, lower in perception. This is why hot girls go with douchebags all the time. They perceive that guy as being higher SMV or better, but of course it's just their subjective perception. And so gaming someone properly and being able to mirror and lead them to where you want them to go and having social calibration, that should determine whether you go mode 1 or direct game or indirect game. You see, if you have social calibration, you'll know without thinking about it exactly where you want to go as soon as you run into somebody, as soon as you meet somebody. And that's what I teach, and that's where I want to get you. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if you're doing this through numbers game on dating apps and swipes and so forth, or if you're only doing cold approaches or in-person or social circle game. Having the social calibration is going to increase your success no matter what medium or format that you're doing, or in order to meet high quality women. All right, I say quality, but you get what I mean. So more along this lines here, a couple more examples so it can make more sense. So how you can apply it, because this is a nice intellectual exercise, but if you don't understand how to apply it, it's kind of useless, right? So let's say you run into a girl. Here's the quadrant again. Let's say you run into a chick and she's interested. Okay, she's like a 2 or 3 interested. All right. She's at a bar, she's ready to be approached. She sees you, she gives you indicators of interest. You look kind of cute. So she's kind of neutral, to her. She's kind of neutral on the tension comfort scale right now. You know what I mean? And she hasn't figured you out yet. But she's open. So she's a little bit open, 2 or 3. So you meet this girl, that's an easy, simple, normal pickup scenario. She gives you indicators of interest. You open with saying hello and something, whatever. You ask her a question or an opinion or an observation, doesn't matter. And then she's already open and she opens up to you, and then you go straight direct. Do you know what I mean? You can just go, damn, you look incredible or whatever. That's a compliment, which I don't recommend, but that's another story. But that would be something that could work. Not saying compliments don't work, but there's a reason why I don't recommend compliments, but that's another topic of another video. But I mean, you could just open her right away, and you can get direct and overtly sexual pretty early on in that conversation. And then that will, because she is open, that'll increase the sexual innuendos, the sexual talk, and some of those stuff, provided you're socially calibrated. Will bring her tension up. You're going to balance the comfort with the tension, and you're going to continue to make her aroused. And then, you're into that alpha category, which is high tension and sexually open, and she has a great sexual experience, and so do you. Okay, so that's a typical pickup scenario. You know what I mean? And so that's when you're balancing comfort and tension the right way. She gives indicators of interest. You start off, you go direct. You let your sexual interest be known rather quickly. All right, that can be fine, okay? So, but what if she's, let's say, intimidated by you? Let's use a different thing. So let's say it's somebody like me, and she sees me. All right, I already give off a very intense vibe or presence usually, okay, when I'm out. It's a very kind of, it's not always intentional. It's just what happens having a physical presence. So I can be a pretty physically imposing or have a presence about me, and that could make certain girls intimidated. All right. So what if when I approach or say hello, there's a ton of tension. She's intimidated and she's a little bit closed because of that intimidation. Maybe she has a whole bunch of stereotypes about white guys who are jacked with tattoos. You know what I mean? Like, stereotypes play a role with your race, with your markings, with your build. All right. They play that role. And to some of these women, I look like a guy who's going to, rip their head off and bang their corpse, right? And so that's fine for some girls. That's like, they like that sense of adventure. They want that danger. But some girls are going to be, a little bit intimidated by that. So what do you think is going to happen if I go up to that girl and just be like, I'm going to take you home and bang your lights out, or I'm going to give you, orgasms into a coma, like right off the bat in the middle of having a conversation with her. Even if I say that in a very socially calibrated way, what do you think is going to happen, right? Okay, she's going to be way too much tension, and then she's going to sexually close off, because that's going to send alarms to her. I become now the creepy, rapey person. You see what I'm saying? So that's not good, right? There's a situation where direct game isn't going to work for you. So what happens here is she's intimidated. I have to use comfort now. I have to give her comfort signals to gradually open her up. So she gets more comfortable about being around me through the comfort signals that I give her, and through just interaction, conversation, lack of investment, super chill attitude, just a very alpha but very chill, low drama attitude, even just that frame of mind that I present to her in my voice and in my tone, and very soothing way of talking to her. Bring that comfort into it. And we don't talk about anything sexual. It's very indirect now, because and then I make that connection with her, and she gets comfortable, and then she starts thinking, God, there's something about this guy, and now I start bringing a little bit of tension, start pausing a little bit more, start making deeper eye contact, a little bit of kino, still not saying anything sexual. You see what I'm saying? And now she starts thinking, God, there's something about this guy, I feel good around him, and now I balance that tension and that comfort now. As she turns around, she opens up sexually now, because she starts thinking about that. There's something about this guy, right? And so now we go to where we want to be, right? Which is having that crazy, awesome, high desiring alpha sex that she's looking for, okay, eventually. But I bring her from comfort. I have to start with comfort, because she started off with being intimidated by me, right? So there's an example where using the concepts or the principles of this quadrant helps me socially calibrate how I approach or talk to a woman, okay? And this is why it's not a contest between direct or indirect game. It's gonna depend on the context that you're in. If you come in direct and you're not socially calibrated, and you're not considering whether it's this model that I'm presenting or a different model, it doesn't really matter, but you're not considering where she's at mentally and subjectively, in terms of how she perceives you and her overall mood, you're going to fail, and you're going to embarrass yourself a lot, okay? And you're not going to have the success you want with women. And there's a lot of good prospects out there that will give you burning desire, that when you first meet them, they're just not open, or they're not ready, or whatever it may be, And so this is why having this game, this is what game is. It's not just coming in and getting over approach anxiety, and then just approaching a bunch of girls, telling them how hot they are, and how you really want to, spend some time with them or whatever, and hitting with a sledgehammer, right? I mean, it's not just that. That's just numbers game. That's a weak ass game. That's low level. That's low level, man. So I'm teaching you high level stuff now, which unfortunately a lot of you guys are going to need actual coaching from me. You're not going to be able to just do this, but whatever. You're getting the idea. Okay, so let's say here, and this is a good one. All right, so like my LTR I'm in right now, when I first met her, she wasn't in a good mood when I first met her. So she saw me. I noticed an IOI right away. I noticed her notice me in a sexual level. But just because she noticed me sexually, that's just her primitive chimpanzee brain noticing a guy who would be a good lay, okay? But that doesn't mean she's gonna jump on the sack with me. She was closed when I met her because she wasn't having a good night, all right? So she saw me more or less neutrally, because she was a little bit, if anything, she was actually a little bit on the tension side, because then there were all the negative stereotypes of a guy like me, okay? A well-dressed guy who's in good physical shape, that takes up a lot of space and is a bit imposing. Yeah, she had a lot of negative stereotypes about a guy like that. I'm a jerk, I'm probably an a-hole, all those things that she had in there, okay? Which all that stuff comes from the existential threat of being discarded by an alpha anyway. It's a protective measure, but that was her frame of reference. She was probably even more on the tension side, and she was closed. She wasn't in a good mood. So what am I gonna do? Am I gonna mode 1 direct gamer? I mean, I can, and also get blown out too real fast, all right? And I'm in a public place, in a bar area where there's other prospects too. So if women see you just getting blown out girl after girl because you're just approaching and hitting them with a hammer, okay, of I want to bang, the direct game hammer, well, what happens is that you get noticed as that becomes social proof that you're not worth hooking up with. So other girls will notice your lack of success and they won't want to be the one to jump on that hand grenade, even if you look good and present yourself well, okay? So keep that in mind. This is why having social calibration is good. So let's say you're down here, you're closed, she's closed, I'm sorry, she's not in a good mood, all right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build a little bit of comfort, and I'm not gonna talk about anything sexual, but I'm gonna build comfort through the conversations I'm having, innocuous, non-sexual conversations. She gets a little bit comfortable with me and enjoying having those little bits of exchanges, and then I can start building a little bit of tension. But see how it's like a short line here? I'm building tension, but with the way I'm talking and the way I'm interacting, not going direct or overt yet, because she's not open yet. She's not open yet, all right? You start going direct or overt, she's not gonna go, oh, I went from really not sexually interested in anyone in a bad mood right now to, oh yeah, you're right, let's go jump in the backseat of your car. It doesn't really work like that, right? So I start to open with a little bit of tension, and then, okay, so now she's starting to open. So I keep some of that tension. Now I'm sprinkling a little comfort, a little tension, oscillating back and forth, and then boom, we get to over here where the alpha sex happens. So my LTR used that as an example. She was in a bad mood, she was closed. I came up to her, and I'd already talked to other people that night too, but I came up to her and I just set my drink down right in front of her. You know, so if you can imagine, she's sideways. I set my drink down, right? I just kind of pause. So now I'm a little bit tension, right? It's almost obnoxious. And so she notices my hand, notices my drink, looks at me. Now, a guy had brought his dog into the bar. Whenever something like that happens, it's a perfect opener because the guy's doing something weird. It's something to talk about. So just set this down. I just kind of leaned in a little bit because I noticed she had talked to him earlier. And of course, the guy he brought the dog in and he was trying to, he was a try-hard. He was trying to get all this attention with his dog and trying to get chicks' attention. It was all BS, of course. And most of these women saw right through it because he wasn't good at it. And so I just kind of leaned over and I just said, just kind of like low so she could hear. I went, so what's up with this dude with the dog? Friend of yours? Or what's his problem? Something like that. And she just kind of like laughed. She goes, I don't know. This guy's a big dork. I'm like, yeah. Seems like pretty try hard to me, So are you telling me you're not going to go jump in the sack with him right now because he showed you his puppy? He seems like a real eligible bachelor. I think you should, see if maybe suck his dick in the bathroom or something. Okay, so now I actually just went in a sense direct, right? Because I started talking sexually, but I wasn't talking about myself. That was part of that tension build and going up this ladder. She's laughing. We start having conversations. Conversations, though, is more innocuous, kind of like, what do you do, that kind of stuff. Wasn't boring, okay? She was engaged, but it was just a chill conversation. The way I talked to her, though, with a soothing alpha presence and voice, made that alluring and drew her in. That built the tension. The topics being non-sexual built the comfort. So we kind of continued to oscillate. By the end of the night, she was making out with me and leaving stuff in my car so that I could meet up with her later, and was sending me photos later, and probably maybe if she wasn't, she had a little bit of alcohol and she was with her friends, staying at her friend's house. But if that wasn't the case, there was a good chance we maybe would have ended up sleeping together same night when she was, and we ended up obviously sleeping together later, so not a big deal. But she went from closed, a little bit on the tension side. If I had come up to her and just blown myself out with mode 1, this chick is a hot chick. I'm not like, do you think I'm with some ugly LTR here? She's a hot girl and she's awesome. Or I wouldn't be an LTR with her. So I ended up in really the best LTR I've ever been in my life. Okay? Based on somebody who is not that interested in me, a little bit, but not that much, and sexually closed from the get-go when I came up to her. So I had to be socially calibrated, and I had to move along the line to get her where I wanted, which eventually was high desiring alpha sex, okay? Mind-blowing sexual experience, which is high tension and very sexually open, okay? And she had so much tension that she almost she was like almost too nervous, but that was actually a good thing. That's a place you want to be. So that's an example, okay? Another example. And, I'll stop with the examples right there because the video's already pretty long, but we can go through example after example. When you use this quadrant, this, attraction or arousal quadrant effectively, where you're noticing or looking at the difference between tension and comfort and how sexually open versus sexually closed she is. And you're also noticing that's another scale that I'll put that video on where her sexual decision points will make a difference. Her desire versus her sexual decision points will have to do with how open or closed she is. All right, so that's a big thing. She's in a terrible, so let's say use examples like if she is, you're kind of, see a hot girl, but she is running out of the store because she's in a hurry and she's late and she looks flustered and upset. For example, she's like a 10 closed, right? She doesn't even notice you. If you come up to her in any way, shape, or form, she is so closed, the chances of her opening up for you pretty slim, right? And so that's, at that point, her desire for anyone is pretty low. Her sexual decision point is high, meaning that she would have to have a lot of desire at that point, which she doesn't have for anybody in order to make a sexual decision to be with that person. And it's just not going to work, right? It has nothing to do with how alpha you are as a guy. That has nothing to do with burning desire versus not burning desire. You could run into that same girl in a different context, right? And she's maybe she's closed at that point, but you know how to socially calibrate and open her up, and all of a sudden, maximum burning desire. Again, example, my long-term relationship, my woman has extreme amounts of desire for me, all right, in ways that I cannot describe here, okay? And that's a good thing. That's how it should be. And it didn't start off that way. Okay, the potentiality was there, but you won't find out if the potentiality is there for a woman to have burning desire for you until you have interactions with them, until you end up in the bedroom with them, until you start building these connections. Because you'll find that some girls you'll get in the bedroom right away, and their burning desire might be high, but just the connection's not good. Your burning desire is not that high, right? Or they sleep with you, but they're hung up on an ex, or they're hung up on this or that or the other, and their burning desire is just not that high. Their sexual decision point was just a little bit lower that day. They had enough desire to be with you, but she's not about to sell all her possessions and follow you in some scenario where she's giving her life up for you or anything, right? It was just a 1 or 2 night stand type of thing, right? And we see these things all the time. So your SMV is important. Okay, work on yourself, but you have to understand, going back full circle, that there's a subjective nature to this, and what you're not looking for. What you're looking for is subjective buy-in. Okay, and that means her subjectively buying into making a sexual decision in your favor. All right, that happens through a number of factors, but that happens or develops through game and how you communicate with her. I have several scenarios of guys with high SMV, a lot of money, a lot of status, like the example I used of that professional ball player who blew themselves out, struck out with the girl, okay, because they weren't socially calibrated. They didn't know how to game in this manner. They didn't know how to balance tension and comfort, and they couldn't recognize where she was on a scale of closed to open, and did not know how to move her through a process of tension and comfort to open her up sexually, and then move into having high tension, high sexual openness for an amazing sexual experience. They didn't know how to do that, so they blew themselves out with these girls. Or sometimes they would get a girl to sleep with them because of status, but her level of excitement, not so much, okay? And that's how that happens. So when you understand this quadrant, you understand how to socially calibrate, how to communicate. And I know we didn't talk about nuances of communication, but we did talk a little bit, but that's how you get someplace. And now you have abundance. I don't care if you have 5 different dating apps and profiles up, or 0 dating apps and profiles up. You'll have nothing as a single guy or as a guy, doesn't matter what you are. You'll always have available women because you'll know how to meet a woman and how to move her from closed to open through a process of balancing out tension and comfort. You'll have that social calibration. You'll know how to communicate and how to do that. And when you know that, there's nothing but abundance. You can just, it's like you could be dry, it doesn't matter. You could just go out and then you have options. You have dates. You know what I mean? You have women that are interested in you all the time. And that's the place to be. That's the level of abundance. And I hear all this stuff and a lot of good shows that are out lately about different places like to do game, like, you know, when Creator was talking about Miami day game and what to do in Miami versus what to do in this city or that city. Listen, when you have this down, it doesn't matter. I've been all over the world and I've been in all different cities. All right, it doesn't matter, okay? Because at the end of the day, here's the thing about this. You got to keep this in mind. At the end of the day, the highest SMV woman on earth still wants to get smashed and have amazing sexual experiences with the dude she perceives as the high genetic alpha option. Period. End of story. I don't care if she has 1 million followers on Instagram, pictures of her butt everywhere, and nothing but male attention, okay? That girl, if she perceives you through this process of communication and this process of game as the high genetic alpha option, and you know how to build that tension and move her along that line, guess what? She's going to want to have an amazing sexual experience with you. Doesn't matter her SMV, doesn't matter if she has high status. She'll still go on high status dates with celebrities and all that stuff, and then she's going to be in the bedroom with you because she wants to still have those sexual needs met. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that's the girl you should wife up, okay? You have to decide who you're going to want to approach and who you want to be with. That's a decision you have to make. But the point is, when you this is primal communication. This is communication to a woman's primal center of her brain. And this is communication to a woman's emotional centers. Just because Instagram and social media and dating apps have been around for a decade or so, all right, or a couple decades, we're not evolved for those things, right? We're still evolved for this communication. They're still evolved to respond to an alpha male who knows how to communicate to her in a sexual manner, in a sensual manner, in a seductive manner, okay? And that is what this is. This is all about seduction, all right? And I'm giving you the formula for how to do it. Women hate that, by the way, because they want a guy just to show up and just be awesome at seduction. But us men know that's not exactly how it works, you know? You have to do the work and you have to, learn how to handle, how to do well in this area, right? And so, anyway, but that's it. When you have seduction skills, it really doesn't matter. I might have, let's say, in an area I'm not familiar with, you know what I mean? There might be some certain social things I might not be aware about or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That might hinder me a little bit, but it's not going to be a big hindrance. You know what I mean? Because as soon as I'm able to engage a woman on that level, on whatever level, no matter where she is at in her mood or her initial perceptions of me, I know how to move them through this quadrant to get them where I want, which is high desire, seeing me as the alpha option, high amount of tension, and a high amount of sexual openness. That's it. When you have that secret, you can go anywhere in the world. All right, guys, this is actually a really important video and really long, but I'm laying it out here, dude. I'm giving you the blueprint for free on YouTube. I'm giving you the blueprint. So share this, okay? Guys, want to know more about game? This is the game for you. All right, guys, have a good one. Thanks for the support. Oh, by the way, subscribe, like, share, get on my list, my private list. I only put out a couple things a month, so if you don't get something right away, stay tuned, all right? Because it's good content, and so it takes a while to develop. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Take care.